Joe, I'll start with the first stay away, and that is Mr. Antonio Gibson from the Washington Commanders. Um, Obviously, I'm glad Josh isn't here for this because I know that we'd go on a 3-hour tangent about his love for Antonio Gibson. But here's the thing: we all can agree he looked terrible in the preseason game. Now, I don't want to overreact to one preseason game, but it's hard to see him make the same mistake he's been making his entire career in the first preseason game. He holds the ball too far away from his body, and players are able to punch it out. It happens all the time. Jeremy Chin was able to get in there and smack that ball out. So it's hard for me to trust Antonio Gibson. And the thing is that Brian Robinson looked really good in the offense behind him. Now, Brian Robinson was not going against the ones, obviously, so I have to take that a little bit with a grain of salt. But they didn't draft Brian Robinson in the third round for nothing. That's all. That's all I'm saying. So my first stay away, a player you do not want on your team, because if he gets benched by the fifth game, you're going to be looking at yourself like, why did I take him in the third round of my draft? Is Antonio Gibson. Joe, what do you think?
Absolutely. So Antonio Gibson, didn't know what to make of him after all the news is coming out with Brian Robinson and McKissick. When McKissick originally signed with the Bills, I was like, oh my God, can we finally see Gibson in his natural receiver position a little bit? You know, maybe running some slot lining up out wide. I was really excited for it, but then McKissick comes back. And then they signed Brian Robinson, the guy runs hard. He is not afraid of contact. He's a coach's ball player, if you will. And, you know, it definitely muddies the water. The problem with Antonio Gibson is you're seeing him go in the third round, the fourth round, the fifth round, the sixth round, the seventh round. At some point, he becomes very valuable. And I'm just having a really hard time drawing the line as to when that is, because his role is going to be undefined. We assume that he's going to, you know, get most of the work. Brian, starting off this season at least.
Mm-hmm.
If you can hold on to it from there, that's awesome. I mean, you could have a guy that's going to be a solid RB2 for you that could, you know, help you get you to a championship. You could have a guy that loses his job to Brian Robinson, at least half of his job to Brian Robinson, and then you get McKissick on the third downs. And what do we have out of that guy? I mean, we really don't have anything. So I'm with you, Billy. I'm staying away.
It's a little concerning that the pass catching work is mainly going to be McKissick. So if you assume that the Washington Commanders are going to be bad this season and they're going to be playing from behind, they're going to need their pass catching back out there. That's McKissick. If you think about Brian Robinson possibly being the player that plays from the 20-yard line in that red zone situational back, where does that leave Antonio Gibson? That leaves him playing on the between the 20s and not in game situations where they're going to be down. I don't like that math personally. Joe, I know you just finished a math class. I don't like that math. I just don't. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up to a good situation. Now, he is only 24 and he was drafted by this regime, so they still have to have they can't cut their losses, but the fact that they're muddying the waters further makes me think that not even that. I think they want to be a passing team with Wentz as well.
Yeah.
So I think that could further take opportunities away from all of the running backs, so that pie could be cut even more. It's just, I don't know. I don't want him on my team, and I can't tell people to also take them on their team.
Right. And I'm very much with you. I mean, with Heineke at quarterback last year, they had a very inefficient run game just because he wasn't producing to the wide receiver. So you could make the argument that Wentz is going to come in and at least use McLaurin and Dotson. And if they can get anything out of Curtis Samuel, that would be awesome. But use those weapons to kind of open up the running game a little bit more. But we just don't know what slice of the pie Gibson's going to get at this point. So it's better off just letting someone else have him.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Who's your first stay away?
My first is Mr. Cam Akers. I was in a draft 2 days ago where Cam Akers went in the second round. He is currently 40th overall in RB20 in ADP. And then the Cam Akers train. I was absolutely on this train the rookie season due to his insane ability to break tackles and be an elusive backle at Florida State. He was awesome. I mean, I was worried about him going to the Rams because of their offensive line. And this year they lost a great leader in Andrew Whitworth. So Akers has experience running behind a horrible offensive line, and he was really good on the Seminoles in that role. But I want to point out the long-term effects of an Achilles rupture. 1, problems with balance. 2, an altered gait. 3, poor strength of the affected leg, resulting in an overcompensation of the uninjured leg. And 4, mobility issues. So I want to focus on those 4 issues because balance issues, altered gait, and limited mobility are all things that I noticed when Akers came back last year. It was very impressive that he was able to do what he did and come back that quickly from that serious of an injury. But put simply, he did not look right. On top of that, his risk of re-injury is also very high this year, especially if he was compensating his other leg during rehab. Now, I know he has a world-class athletic staff, but the cards are absolutely stacked against him for ever being a top back for fantasy. Akers has 3 touchdowns in his career and has had some pretty miserable yards per carry numbers in the playoffs last year. If the injury limits his ability to break tackles, it's bad news for a back that does not have top end speed. So where Cam Akers is going and how high everyone seems to be on him, I expect that to fluctuate a little bit more as we get closer to the season. But I'm completely out on Akers this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's going as running back 19 right now on Underdog. Way too high. It's just, I think that the split between him and Darrell Henderson is going to be 50-50, more or less. So I don't really think that I don't think that you should be pushing it getting Akers. Darrell Henderson, I just looked up, is an RB40 right now. Yeah. That's going to be a lot closer together by the time we actually get to the season. And right now you're going to get a heck of a steal on Darrell Henderson, and you're not going to get as much of a steal on Cam Akers. And the person that takes Cam Akers is going to be wondering to themselves, why did I trust that he was going to be this good on this offense? Darrell Henderson, I think a lot of people think Darrell Henderson's been in the league a long, long time, and he hasn't. He's still under 25. He's still got plenty of juice left in the tank. There is injury concern, but if there was an injury concern with him, there's definitely an injury concern with Cam Akers. So, in my opinion, with Sean McVay and how he likes to run this offense, he does not like to feature a back. He's never wanted to feature a back. So why would he start now? Unless he has to, obviously. When Darrell Henderson was by himself, he had to feature him. But
sorry, Bill, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the only good thing that the Rams, they don't have anybody behind either of them. So
yeah, they do.
That's okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Joe.
they do.
Yeah,
I'm going to talk about him later, so I'm going to hold it.
Okay,
I'm going to hold anything going on here, but I don't think people understand how good Darrell Henderson actually was last year when given the opportunity. I mean, he averaged over 6 yards per carry on the games he did. He pretty much put up the exact same numbers that Akers was putting up the years before, or the year before. So Darrell Henderson can be extremely effective in that role. Like you said, he's also young, and then you add other people to this offense with a depleted line, and also Allen Robinson being there. And I just think, we're really starting to get in the muddy waters of what is this backfield really going to look like. So let someone else have him.
I agree completely. 100%.
Right. Bill, what you got? 1,000%, man.
1,000%. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about Treylon Burks from Tennessee. Now, Treylon Burks right now is not going, extremely high anyway, but there is a lot of talk about Treylon Burks going higher. Because, of what he will mean to that offense, where he was taking the draft is no mistake. They traded A.J. Brown away to basically get Treylon Burks on their team. Here's my concerns. The coaches seem to really be talking about him being inconsistent. And it was during the game that it was inconsistent. During practice, it was inconsistent. There's a lot of I don't know. I just don't like the vibe, Joe. How about that? I just don't like the vibe that I get from how the Tennessee coaching staff is talking about Treylon Burks. And this is not what you should be hearing about your number one pick on your team, your first round pick. You should not be hearing that the coaches don't believe in him and they want to push him and stuff. He was playing with the twos during the preseason game. That's really weird. He was playing into the fourth quarter of the preseason game, the first round pick wide receiver that you got on your team. That's really weird, Joe. I don't know how
Very
else to
weird.
say it. It's just the vibe is off, and he could end up being completely fine. I still think he's a fantastic receiver. His talent is definitely, is what got him drafted where he got drafted. But the thing of it is I just don't. The vibe is just not catching me for some reason, and for that reason, I just don't want him on my team. I would be very happy to see him pop off on another team, and basically, there's no one else there other than Robert Woods, maybe Kyle Phillips that can catch passes, but it's just not the person I want on my team. I just don't trust them just that much.
Right. And this, we're talking redraft here. So Treylon Burks, you're completely right. The vibes are off. They started with the asthma thing, and then he was over the asthma thing, and then he actually had a couple really good practices where we saw some highlights out of that. My thing with Treylon Burks, and you bring up the inconsistencies, he's a rookie. For all we know, he could have walked in there just acting like a complete diva. He was a first round pick. He could have been like, oh, I'm the shit, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you're playing with the twos, we're going to knock you down a couple of pegs and all that stuff. So, I almost feel like the silence we're hearing out of the team on this guy it might actually be beneficial for him in the long run because it's going to tone him down and get him to focus on what he's trying to do. And he's a rookie wide receiver. The talent's there. The Dominator rating in college was just off the charts. He's a really good football player, and Robert Woods is a great football player too, but they're going to have to throw the ball because we expect that defense to actually take a step back this year. So I like A.J. Brown, he is A.J. Brown. Treylon Burks. A.J. Brown was a little bit inconsistent when he came into the league too. So
yeah.
I don't know. I expect some growing pains along the way, but in a redraft, I can absolutely see, not being high on him. In Dynasty, I am all in on this guy.
Dynasty, I think you don't have anything to worry about. I think it's just for redraft sake. It's just, and you might end up with him. It really depends on how far he falls in your particular draft, listener out there. Like it really just kind of is going to matter where he goes. But you don't want to be the one to reach for him too high. Like I would definitely reach for Drake London, even though he got injured. Like he's somebody I would reach for because I think his role is defined. He's going to have the coaches are elated with him. He's going to get a lot of passing work, but Treylon Burks, I don't know. There's just something missing about this season. And I don't know. Maybe I'm lower on Robert Woods than I should be. Maybe Robert Woods is going to end up being the one on this team and Treylon Burks for at least the first year, maybe the two, which is not at all what I thought when they drafted him. I thought it was not going to be that way. And coming out of Arkansas, Joe, Treylon Burks is a diva coming out of Arkansas. Like this is the world we live in now. He's not coming out of Alabama or Georgia or USC or Oklahoma or something. He's coming out of Arkansas, and he's having these weird vibes. So I don't know. Just don't want the headache on my team, but somebody else can have him.
I agree with you, man. I'm all for it. I just think this team this year, they saw what happened when they run Derrick Henry into the ground. Hassan Haskins and Dontrell Hilliard are fine pieces, but I think your offense is going to run through Henry, Woods, and Burks. I don't see any other way that that's going to function. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I'm with you, but I'm not, if that makes sense.
You're with it for this exercise.
I'm with it for this exercise. So, guys, I'm going to talk about Kyle Pitts here. He is my stay away. He's currently.
Did Josh have you do this?
Yeah, Josh actually paid me to do this, so this is a shameless plug right here. But man, Kyle Pitts, he's going at 33 overall. He's the tight end 3 right now, and there is no doubting this guy's talent at all. But I'm making the same argument that Josh made last year because the Falcons are a team that has very little talent to begin with, and now we add Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder to the mix. The results are not going to be pretty here. Mariota has never been a big yardage quarterback, and even though he's a massive threat in the red zone, most of that has come with his legs. So Kyle Pitts had 1,000 yards last year, but only 1 TD. He finished number 9 tight end in fantasy in a PPR, but now we're adding Drake London and Bryan Edwards into this offense. Drake London 6'5" and will be a huge target in the red zone. So I don't think you can make the argument that Kyle Pitts is your huge red zone target because now you got another guy out there too that can do it. So he's an absolute stud, and I'm not knocking him in any way. But at 33 overall, there are at least 15 guys behind him that I would rather have on my team this year. And I would take my shot on a Schultz, a Goddard, a Hawkinson, a Freiermuth, one of those later tight ends, and just let someone else draft Kyle Pitts early, because I don't see there's any way of him taking the next step this year, especially when they are downgrading in quarterback from Matt Ryan. Say what you will about Matt Ryan. He did not have a pretty year last year, but he's a hell of a quarterback. Marcus Mariota, not so much.
He's not. The only thing that could make this make sense is if the Falcons do kind of like a Houston thing last year, like how they had Davis Mills. Like they put Desmond Ridder out there and he has like a Davis Mills type of season. And that's what you're hoping for, because I don't see how this works.
Yeah. I think there's value. You brought up Cordell Patterson last week. We know Tyler Algiers there. Brian Edwards, a lot of hype coming in when he was at the Raiders. He could do something this year for the Falcons, and you had Drake London. I just think there's kind of like what we were talking about with Akers and Antonio Gibson. It's very muddy water, and Burks for that matter. A lot of these guys we're talking about, that's just, it could shake out many different ways. And betting that kind of future on a guy in the third round is, end of the second, third round. That is sketchy to me, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that he is going to – I think the touchdowns are going to go up this year. I think there's going to be like a positive regression, if you will, to where he'll get more touchdowns. But, yeah, you're muddy in the waters a lot, and the quarterbacks are both not very good. So
I forgot Brian Edwards is 6'3", too. So the red zone argument with Mariota's legs and all the towering men they have out there.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
Literally, I think they have the tallest team in the league, because
they probably do.
Cordell Patterson 6'2", Kyle Pitts is 6'3", all the rest of them are 6'3", 6'4". Yeah, I think they might be. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll get on my last one, and it should not shock anybody, but it's Elijah Mitchell. He's going as RB22 right now. I think it's only going to get worse from here. I think I'm just maybe a little early on getting to the hatred of Elijah Mitchell going into the season, but he is hurt currently. He's got a hamstring injury. He's not playing the rest of the preseason. I realize that's only 2 weeks, but if you have a new quarterback, Joe, what's good is to have your starting running back work with him a little bit, especially if you're going to play him in preseason games. So to not have him not out there is not good. And, Elijah Mitchell, he wasn't amazing last season anyway. So it's I don't know. It's kind of tough for me to say or tell anybody to draft him as a player that, could have upside, because I don't think he's got upside. The other reason that you can't trust him is that it's Kyle Shanahan, Joe. Mm-hmm. The same reason we couldn't trust Trey Sermon last season, same reason we couldn't trust Raheem Mostert. We didn't know what in the world was going to go on with that offense. We're here again. We're at the back at square one, and a lot of people are thinking I can trust Elijah Mitchell, right, because of what he did last season.
No,
I would not. That is a mistake. That is something that you fall for again and again and again. Not you, but people fall for again and again and again with Kyle Shanahan, and start trusting people, and then they let you down. So I just relax. Trey Lance is also a runner, Joe. That's also going to take some of those runs away.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, man.
Okay, well, my bad. The goal line work is
no, you're good. I'm agreeing with you. I'm not upset you said that, because I was just like, man, Trey Lance is going to get down there and take off. And you got the weapons, the Debo Kittle combination mixed with Trey Lance's legs and the absolute just round table of running backs that San Francisco produces. Would you be the least bit surprised if by week 5 JaMychal Hasty had 2 top finishes on the 49ers as the running back? You wouldn't.
Not at all.
And then you had Tyrion Davis-Price. You got Trey Sermon, who we talked about last week. You got Jeff Wilson still there. It's muddied. We keep bringing it up. It's absolutely muddied. Elijah Mitchell, he looked pretty good. He didn't have any spectacular outings last year, but he looked pretty good. He looked competent as a starting running back. But does it hold? Time will tell.
Shanahan's always had a couple of running backs. Joe, you remember the days of Carlos Hyde and Matt Breida.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody knew which one to use. 1 week, one of them would go off. The next week, the other one would go off. That happened all the time.
And the shit of it is, Mostert, I think, finished that season as their top running back before he got hurt. So
exactly. Like, you're not wrong. And see, that's just like, why trust Elijah Mitchell now? Like, it's bad. It's the doing the same thing 1,000 times, expecting a different result. Like, it's that exact same thing. And for that reason, I don't want him. And I'm suggesting nobody else do that either.
He's RB50 right now. There's other guys I would absolutely like in that range aside from him on that one. So I'm completely with you, Billy. I'm completely with you. I would like to talk about James Robinson. I'm glad Josh is not here for this one because I don't think I'd ever hear the end of it. James Robinson, man. I'm glad Josh is not here for it. So I have nothing against people with Achilles injuries, even though I keep talking about it, but I do not think that they make great professional athletes. Even with Kobe, Kobe was less effective after his injury, and he's one of the greatest to ever do it. James Robinson is no Kobe. Also, let's quit playing games, folks. He's an undrafted running back coming off of a major injury with a new coaching staff, and a position mate in Etienne, who was a first-round pick last year. Jarvis Landry, Dameon Pierce, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Boyd are all going around him, and I would rather have any of them over Robinson.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. James Robinson is going to lose a lot of work to Etienne, and there's not really a reason for James Robinson to be, somebody that you're going after heavily on your team.
Not at all.